We'll wait one more minute. But I'm just to start today, just want to make an announcement. In Campus Note, I added the quiz from last class for the ones that have not done it, which is very few. And I added a new one that is available starting today at 11. And you have a week to finish it out. Okay, so that's just to start. You cannot answer the quiz yet because you haven't heard it. Good morning. And one more minute because I'm going to wait. I haven't taken attendance. There's no need for a code right now. It takes too long to take attendance for a class this big. So just wait a little bit. So just to start, I put on the screen an ex-alumni from VCU, from mechanical department. And this is Tammi Chen, who has graciously agreed to speak today about her experiences. This is an article that's on the website because Tammi was on the website many times. She was my assistant. She was my student also in 101, I think. I don't remember now.
Yeah, I did for this class years ago.
Yes, years ago. And she also was my assistant for the graduate program, and she helped me even design some of the new labs that exist, is thanks to Tammy's love for robotics. Yes, the quizzes are in Campus Notes. So I thought that she would be great to show you. She is on the VCU website in several places. She had gained a lot of notoriety for all the stuff that she did since she was a freshman. So I still remember her project. She came and showed me. She made an R2D2 from Star Wars with a roommate. So that was pretty cool. And she showed me how to program because I didn't know, because I'm too old and I didn't know. So Tammi has a lot to offer. And with that, I'm just going to let her speak since it's 11:01. There's 100 students already. So I'm going to disappear from the screen, but I'm listening. And with that, Tammi.
I'm gonna start screen sharing. All right, hello everyone. My name is Tammi. I'm currently a product designer at AdeptID. So as you can see, that's not I'm not an engineer right now, but I am a product designer. And I get a lot of questions like, what does the product designer do? So I work on front-end development, user research, interviews, user stories. I also manage our website, and also, most importantly, help customers understand our product and how it might fit in to their ecosystem. And because we are a startup, we have a very small team. I'm the only designer on the team, so I get to wear different hats. So I'm not limited to just working on these different things, but you might find a product designer at a different, maybe a larger company, whose roles are solely focused on maybe designing the user interface or user experience. But I'm lucky enough to try out a bunch of different things because it's a small company. So what is AdeptID? So we use machine learning to help with job ability, especially with middle skill workers without a college degree. And we are also an API first company. So what does an API stand for? It stands for Application Programming Interface. And how it works, well, I'm gonna actually do an example. So let's say the database we're using is a weather database. And we are looking at, you're using a web application looking up the weather in Richmond. So what is happening, what an API is doing, it is providing information back and forth. So when you look up the weather in Richmond, it pings the internet and Well, it pings the API through the internet because the API is a link. So you can put in the city name, the API key, and it'll retrieve the data from the database, and it comes back to your web application. In simpler terms, API allows two applications to talk to each other. What you might not realize is that you use APIs all the time. For example, when you're Googling weather in Richmond, that information on Google is not from Google. Google is using an API to get the information from weather.com to present it in a nicer and neater way. Another example would be logging or creating a new account on a website. So for example, we're using Canva for this one. You can log in with your Google, Facebook, or Apple. It makes the process a lot smoother and seamless because you already have all that information on another site. And what this is doing is getting information from Google. So your name, your email address, and your password. So you don't have to fill all of that out again. So we're going to look at how AdeptID's API works. So this is our documentation page. Any company that's making an API, or if someone has an API, you have to have one because it teaches, it's like basically an instruction manual on how the API is used. But before I go into that, I'm going to talk about what we can use the API for. So we are built for job seekers. So if you're someone who's looking for a job and you're trying to transition into a different occupation, our API can help you figure out what are the likely chances of you or your skills match into a different occupation. So let's say Dorothy wants to become a user support specialist. You can see that she has a pretty high mobility score for this occupation, and these are some of her top transferable skills. Maybe, looking at the new skills that is required for her and potential schools that could help her get those new skills. We are also built for talent seekers. So if you're an employer who are looking for people, let's say tour technicians, there might not be a lot of people who are trained for that occupation, but you can look at people who might have similar skills. So looking at skills fit, but most importantly, looking at their transferable skills. How easy is it for them to transition into this role? So you can see in this case, some overlapping skills and new skills they might require, and they can hire based off of that. It's also built for workforce development. In this case, we are looking for, this person is looking at charger tech in Boston. So you can see the demand for charger tech is quite high, but the amount of people who are trained for this position is not enough to fulfill the demand. So you can actually look at the adjacent talent, people who are similar to charger tech or have similar skills to charger tech to fulfill that position, maybe with a little bit of training. Now, of course, it's also for looking at talent supply and hiring demand and matching them together to make recommendations. So APIs have endpoints. Endpoints are things that do one particular thing. We have organized it in a way where we are answering what the API endpoint is answering. So in this case, what is the likelihood of an individual getting a job in a specific occupation? You could enter that in and see what you get. But before we do that, all the codes that are used in here, you can see you need individual ID, past occupation, and target occupation. Actually, I'm going to try a different one, predict for history. What new occupations this individual most likely to successfully transition into. Everything requires an occupation ID. So this is where the parser comes in. You can actually try it on here, but not publicly because you need the API key. But let's say we'll put in engineer. and you can get the OCC code for it. So the OCC code comes from ONET, which is a website sponsored by the Department of Labor. Because it's a government website, it's kind of janky, but it highlights all the high levels of what a occupation does, like their tasks, the skills they need, and maybe like the knowledge they need. So this is our basis for how we're tagging these different occupations. So if we go back to predict for history, and we'll enter in mechanical engineering. As you can see, of course, the top one, the highest likelihood is mechanical engineers transitioning into mechanical engineers. We can also see that other occupations like surveyors, nanosystem engineers, nanotechnology, all have a medium or high likelihood of transitioning into the occupation. This is a good way to show people, but it's also a little clunky because you have to do so many different things. So what my job does is that I'm using, so these endpoints are like Lego pieces. You can put them together to work, and you can have them working together. So which I'm going to show you here. So I've built a demo app for AdeptID using all of these endpoints. So you can see here we have the title parser. And also using that information with the title parser, I'm also using the endpoint for predict for target and predict skills gap. And all of these are built on top of each other, all relying on the title parser. So we can actually check that out. So we already did this one earlier. So let's say, since you guys are all freshmen, I'm sure you guys have worked in jobs like server, and you're becoming a mechanical engineer. So you can see that the title parser is working. It's parsing out the occupation code and also the official title that they use. And you can see here, these are some of the largest skill gap that you have to learn between a server and mechanical engineer. So 3D modeling, HVAC, sheet metal, all of these make sense, thermodynamics. But let's say you want to know how many people are in Richmond. If you're looking to hire mechanical engineers, how many mechanical engineers are there? So you can see here, there's a supply and all these other adjacent occupation that might be similar to mechanical engineering. So that's a high level of what AdeptID's API does. So why are we working on this? It is important because nearly 35 million of the nation's 80 million workers don't have a college degree, or they're unemployed, or they're working in declining industries that are about to be phased out. While there's also a huge need for middle skill roles like IT, allied health, and renewable energy. So you can see here, there's a lot of people without jobs who want jobs, and also a lot of middle skill roles that need people to fill these roles, and they don't have enough people. So we're trying to, match the supply and demand. So an example would be, let's say you are a cashier at Dunkin' Donuts. You might think that, oh, my only future is working in Dunkin' Donuts or other coffee shops. But what you don't realize is that you have transferable skills that can be applied to other occupations with a little bit of training. So in this case, let's say you're trying to be a pharmacy technician. All the overlapping skills that both occupations have is there are customer service, that's pretty obvious, and both of them know how to work with the public, cooperation, integrity, attention to detail, and also social orientation. So outside of building, so our API is our main product, but outside of that, we also work with other companies building different things. So Right now we're working with Europe and Grads of Life. So Europe is a job training organization that help adults gain new skills and help them place into different jobs. And Grads of Life is a organization that help employers create an inclusive talent strategy. So our work together is to implement predictive analytics into how employers can close the opportunity divide through middle skill hiring. So basically hiring based on skills and not based on credentials. And one of the current projects we're working on with them is helping companies implement DEI, which is like diversity, equity, and inclusion into their company, looking at different types of people they're hiring. Another company or college we're working with is Texas State Technical College, TSTC. We have built a machine learning model to help them predict whether a student is going to be at risk or not based on their academics and finance. So an enrollment coach can enter in their GPA, how many classes they're taking, how many online classes they're taking, how many classes they've attempted, and also tuition, financial aid, and family contribution to help calculate whether that student is likely to succeed. And what's really cool about this, you can sit down with a student and enter all this in. You can also change the numbers to see, oh, what if I give them more financial aid? Would that help them succeed more or less? Or what if you're taking less classes this semester? Would that help you succeed more? So with machine learning and AI, you have to consider the bias. Because humans have bias and humans are the ones who are building these machines, machines also have bias. So we have to consider the impact of our outcomes. So what is AdeptID doing with ethics? Well, first of all, we are partnering with mission-aligned organizations like Europe and Grads of Life. So people who all want to work towards the same thing. And because we are such a small company, we also just started out, we want to continuously monitor our algorithm for bias. So we're very conscious of that, seeing that a bunch of other companies are trying to combat that. Like, for example, there's that whole situation with Airbnb, with profile pictures and combating bias. And there's also facial recognition. So with that, being conscious of bias, we're also implementing technical solutions to counteract biases that present in data training. So that is all important, but what's also important is making sure that we hire people who are diverse. Because if you have if you're hiring people who are within the same group of people, same type of people, you're never going to see the biases from the other end. So that's also another thing we're trying to do. As we are expanding, we're trying to diversify our hires. So if you're really interested in ethics, there's this really cool documentary on Netflix called Coded Bias. It is about this researcher at MIT who is working on a project with facial recognition and how the camera was not recognizing her because she is Black and she had to put a white mask over her face for it to recognize. So it's like her journey through that and looking at other companies who are doing that and trying to fix that issue and also pointing out the different issues. It talks about a lot of ethical issues in big tech, and it's a very interesting watch. I would highly recommend it. So how did I get to where I am now? Well, I, just like all of you, started at VCU for mechanical engineering. I got to engineering. I decided to go into engineering because I did robotics in high school and I was like, this is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I go to engineering school. Maybe sophomore year, I was like, this is cool, but I'm not like this isn't quite what I want to do. It was very different from, building robots. It was just a lot of different other things that I wasn't enjoying as much. So I joined the Da Vinci Center because I wanted something more, I want to do something more with design. And that was kind of the perfect intersection of that. And I got to work with a bunch of other people working on design thinking projects and working with other companies. I found this to be way more interesting. I still like engineering, but I wanted something more. So the friends I made in the Da Vinci Center, we enjoyed it so much that we started a company called Liftoff Innovation. We don't do a lot of projects anymore, but this company was created because how much we liked working on this type of work. And surprisingly, most of them are mechanical engineers, and we have one person from interior design within this company. But I did have my fair share of working in engineering, like specifically mechanical engineering. I've tried a lot of different things to realize that I like this, but I needed something different. I wanted a combination of things. So I was in the UAV lab at VCU. I was on the Hyperloop team. I also interned at Sonic Tools for 2 years, thanks to Professor Mossy. She introduced me to them. But they made custom carbide tooling for companies like Boeing, Apple, sometimes Tesla. So I've definitely been an engineer. I was like, okay, this is not quite what I wanted to do. And once I graduated, I got job offers at engineering companies, and I was like, this isn't quite what I want to do either. Nothing quite matches. So I also, during that time when I was applying to jobs, I was also applying to grad school. So one of the grad schools I applied to and got in was Northeastern. So I decided to go into grad school studying experience design. So it's only a year program, but through that process, I landed a co-op at AdeptID. And very quickly, I got a full-time offer with them, and that's kind of how I ended up here. So even though that's where I am now, the possibilities of my background, the combination of my background of, studying engineering and also design, I can do a lot of different things with that. I could be a product manager in the future, or I could go back and continue engineering as a design engineer. I think the ultimate goal for me in the future is to combine design and engineering together. So designing physical products that are meaningful and usable. But it's not limited to these. I could do a bunch of other stuff. There's some of the engineers that I've known. So there's a professor in the School of Business whose background is in engineering, but he now teaches business. Actually, I think Ezra will be taking his class junior year. And I also know someone else who studied engineering, but doesn't practice it anymore. He now is a farmer and he designed corn mazes, and that's pretty cool. So there's a lot of possibilities. Engineering doesn't close doors. It opens a lot of different doors for you to do different things. And you're not limited to that either. So what is the connection between a mechanical engineer and a product designer? So because AdeptID is very much a data-heavy company, knowing how to analyze the data and present it in a way that is meaningful and easy to read. And I'm sure you guys do that. Well, I guess we'll do that in, I think, Carton's class, where you use Excel and MATLAB and throughout all the different labs. And also, all the different labs. And also understanding to speak to all types of audience. Because mechanical engineering, the information there can get complex, sometimes it's helpful. Not everyone has the same background, so knowing how to speak different lingos or languages to break it down for everyone. Understanding code, even just a little bit. I use code in this job just a little bit, but just, knowing, having some basis of that was super helpful, and being able to translate that skill as a product designer. Learning by doing. I was never a good test taker. I also was really bad at paying attention in classes. So a lot of stuff that I had to learn before a test was, doing a bunch of homework before, test date. So that has, set me up as a foundation of learning very quickly and learning by doing. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but that's, that's how I was. So there's like a lot of different applications that I use as a designer that I've never learned before or never touched, and I'm constantly learning on the go. And knowing how to work on a team, that's also very important because I'm currently working on a lot of different teams, and none of them are designers, none of them are engineers. Well, actually, there's like software engineers. But yeah, just like that's it's important to know how to collaborate. So what can you do as an engineer? Well, there's a ton of possibilities. So we are going to look at some. This is another app that I've made. The other one is not public, but this one is on its way of being public on our website that anybody can use. But it uses the same endpoints. So let's say you are a mechanical engineer. Can someone give me another occupation that they've thought about going into? We can look at some transferable skills and just message it in the chat.
Sales.
Sales.
Sales engineering.
Let's see if that happens. So these are some of the top transferable skills between these jobs. So new product development, field service management, electronics, SolidWorks CAD, cooperation. So you can see that there's a lot of overlap between these two. But let's say we're not looking into engineering. Let's say we're looking into maybe I don't know. We'll do designer since I'm a designer. Or if anybody else has one. Oh, there's a bunch of people. Okay, let's do nuclear.
How about editor?
Excuse me?
What about editor? Like an editor, somebody who writes like books and stuff.
Editor.
Mhm. Mm.
So we have interacting with computers, attention to detail, integrity, English, flexibility, cooperation, reading comprehension, leadership. So all of these all have high skill overlap. But on the reverse, you can also look at skills you need to become an editor. So these are some of the largest skill gaps. So you would have to learn, let's say, photography, design software, Final Cut Pro, all of these different editing softwares. So you can really be anything. You just have to know, you have to really recognize that you have, hard and soft transferable skills as an engineer that, you can use it in any occupation.
Tammi, are these things free to use for everyone?
Yeah, so this app has not been released yet, but I can let you know when it is. And when it does, it's going to be on our website. There's just like some final tweaks that I'm working on, but it should be near the top. There's going to be a demo button that you can test it out and try it with.
And another question for recruiting. You showed an app. Is that also available?
So this
That's
app,
something that like a university can get access to. You have for Texas Tech specifically, the one that looks at grades and things like that.
so we don't currently have one for universities, but I can definitely build one. So I can actually show you the one from Texas TSTC.
So I can see very useful for universities for recruiting.
Mhm.
It's one of the issues that that is coming up, and it might be a way to retain students too that are not happy in engineering, and they want to do something else. So something like this would be nice, or they cannot afford it,
Yeah.
and that's another issue. Is can you adopt it? And there's all kinds of benefits I can see doing that. For those of you who gave all those different careers, we have many students that have different careers, not necessarily mechanical.
Mhm.
And what college teaches you specifically is how to learn new things quickly. And for working on in a small industry a long time ago, I also know that the learning curve is a lot faster when you have a degree than when you don't.
Yeah, exactly. Like even though I've only been in design school for a year, it's a lot easier to pick up new things because I'm always picking up new things in engineering. So you have to learn very quickly. So this one, the app that we've made for them, they can choose degree, term type, GPA. You can kind of see the different credits they need. They have in financial outputs on a scale of 0 to 1, how likely they are to succeed or how likely they are to fail to help them.
This will be very interesting to see, to be able to use it, since retention is a big deal for
Mhm.
universities nowadays. It's my biggest objective with you guys in class is keeping you here to show you that the future is yours. You can do pretty much many different things, but an app like this will be very useful for the students that are really struggling with engineering. And I just got an email from a student doing a master's degree, for example. Is your degree a master's degree, Tammy?
Yeah, it is a master's degree.
And he failed, and I had to give him a termination letter because his GPA went way impossible to recover, and he got an MBA instead. So, and he's quite successful at that. So that's kind of what, but that was his graduate degree. But that was something that he did in less than a year and was able to transfer some of the courses that he had taken and got a degree somewhere else. But at least he got a degree.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point. So this, I can see apps like this becoming, and this is also for your company, Tammy, for universities across the United States to try to keep retention of students, because paying for school is becoming problematic, it's expensive, and many times you're struggling in a class that you might never use ever again. I'm sure Tammy loves thermodynamics. I'm being funny.
Yeah, really love that class.
And you probably never use it.
No.
And you stay away from the field. It's just, so that's kind of like, you can do many different things, even if you don't like one class. Making a decision about your career for not liking one class is a bad idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I chose to, I mean, I was not an A+ student in college. I was very much a BC student, especially with engineering courses, and a lot of them I did not like. I think the only one I liked was Carton's class with SolidWorks, and that was like about it. Everything was like downhill for me. But I realized that I didn't.
Hey, I'm offended. What about Inter? I'm just kidding.
But like that didn't stop me from continuing because I was like, okay, this is a very versatile degree. I can do a lot of different things with that. I'm not limited to just engineering. So just like the examples I've used from cashier to pharmacy tech, I just needed a little bit more training in some of the new skills I have to gain to be able to transition into another field. So, super helpful like that. And the last thing we're going to do, we are going to, I'm going to quickly show you how to use an API, just some very simple ones. So the web app that the web software I use is called Bubble. You can use it for free as long as you're not publishing the app online. And let's see. So we have a blank page. So there's a lot of different free APIs out there that you can use. So for example, I thought this one was pretty cool. Random images of dogs. And usually it comes with the API link. So you can, Bubble makes it really easy. It's like a low code coding software. And I have the plugin downloaded already. Actually, let me delete this. I was testing this out. Also, on the back end of the AdeptID API of how I implement it into the Bubble app is just all exactly the same. I'm copying and pasting the link from the documentation center and also the body, and I'm able to add these brackets around it to make it a dynamic text. So for this one, we'll call it dog, and then we'll call this one random. And then we paste the link in here and we initialize the call. So it's able to see, I'm able to see the results of this. And I can specify what that thing is. So I'm like, all right, this one's an image. And go back into design. I can create a button that says fetch and create a place for the image to go into. So this is where kind of the magic happens. You can enter dynamic text. So this one, we're getting data from an external API, which I've set up already. And you can go into dog random, close, and then we're like, all right, the message. So I'll read the image URL. So we got to do something with this button because currently this button does nothing. So we got to start and end a workflow. So I'm going to say when this button is clicked, we are going to refresh the page. So that's going to refresh it, create a different dog picture. So we use preview. You can see a dog, and then you can hit fetch, and it'll give you another dog. So it can get more complex than that. You can, let's try this one. Let's go to documentation center with by breed. Trading. So this one's kind of built in already. You can select different ones and it'll show you different dog pictures, but let's try and put this into the API, but into our web app. Do another image. Actually, I gotta put that in the. So we're gonna add another call, another endpoint. So we have here. So adding brackets here allows me to make this field dynamic. So we can call this dog breed. And then we'll try like initialize the call just to make sure that, oh, it does not work. Maybe I spelled it wrong. Try a different one. For understanding that one's not working, but there's going to be some troubleshooting around. But you can use any of these, any ones that are free to implement into your app and do different things. And it can get very complex, but that's okay because, you know, there is a rising industry in low code app. So you don't have to know a lot of code, but just like some basic amounts of code. So for one of the projects I'm working on, there's no API, but there is a lot of workflow going on. So different buttons do different things, and it can build on top of that. But, starting with the basic ones like this one, it's really fun to play around with it. But that's kind of how you build an API onto a web app. So maybe-
Tammy, because I actually put something on the quiz, I want to, can you tell them how you got involved in the project that you that you went to California and all that?
Yeah, so I forgot to mention, so I was on the Hyperloop team. My friend Arthur started the team, and I was really close friends with him. We also met through the DaVinci program. I was really interested in it, so I started working on it with him and a bunch of my other friends, and a lot of people started joining as well. That was like kind of mainly how I got into it, because even before the team was started, I was friends with Arthur, and he was talking about starting it. I was like, oh yeah, I'd be interested if you created a team. So we built a pod. Well, we didn't build a pod first. We had to submit a bunch of proposals, and we had to get selected into different rounds. So we, as a rookie team, we somehow made it into the final round. We were invited out to California, and we got to compete. We never got to test our pod because there was a long checklist that we had to go through to make sure that everything was okay to go, so nothing would explode or break in this mile-long tube. But it was such an important experience because I got to really use a lot of skills that I learned in schools, like CADing, drafting, and also machining, and putting all my skills together into that. I did not started the team. Well, I guess I sort of did. I was kind of like one of the first group of people, but I hung out with Arthur quite a bit, so it was he talked about it a lot. So I was like, yeah, you should do it. So, does anybody have any questions about Hyperloop, about AdeptID APIs? By time at VCU, happy to give out any advice.
I'm kind of curious, how did you just initially start getting into like programming and all that from the get-go, like even in high school?
So I didn't get into programming in high school. In fact, throughout college, I tried to.
Just robotics?
So while I was on the robotics team, I didn't do any programming. I did a lot of machining. So the mill, CNC, so I had like skills in that. And I was more interested in that than coding. In fact, I was trying to avoid coding the plan was to avoid it for most of my life, but I've realized I've come to the conclusion, like, I can't do that. And funny enough, right now I'm finishing up my master's degree. I only have one class left. I'm actually taking a coding class in visualization. So it was realizing that it's inevitable. You just have to learn it, even just like a little bit, goes a long way. So just doing simple things, like if you want to learn coding, using block coding to understand the logic. I think in one of the labs that with the robots, instead of coding everything out, you're using block coding. So that's like a lot less daunting, like Scratch. Scratch is a software. But also, if you want to do something more like what I did, like creating an app using APIs, that's also not super daunting either, because it's a lot of copy and pasting and just understanding what each of the element is doing.
Tammy, it looks like a lot of people don't know what Hyperloop is.
Okay, so Hyperloop is, I'm sure all of you have heard of Elon Musk. He was trying to create another form of transportation system. Basically, it is a train. Instead of traveling on rails, it's using magnetic levitation, traveling in a vacuum. So basically, you're reducing friction on two sides, air friction and also like friction. So it allows you to travel at super high speeds. to give you an idea, you can go from DC to New York in about 30 minutes if you build a Hyperloop track. So because the idea was kind of novel, it's less novel now because you have Virgin Hyperloop working on it. But for a while, there were Hyperloop competitions where college students from everywhere can compete in building a pod and trying to race it in a tube. What projects did I work on? Did you work on VCU? So I worked in the UAV lab. I worked on Hyperloop. For the Da Vinci Center, I worked on a project with Capital One, redesigning their reservation system. And of course, all the other class projects in between. And then for my senior design, I worked on recumbent bike system, designing a recumbent bike cover and lock.
Just when they're making jokes, just
Yeah, no.
just ignore it.
Any other questions?
Any questions you'd like to ask Tammi? This is your chance. When did you graduate, Tammi? What year?
The dreadful year of 2020, right into the pandemic.
So she didn't even have graduation ceremonies, did you?
No, so it's funny enough, Arthur was like asking a bunch of my friends to come back and asking me to come back for graduation, but I did not because I was in Boston. I'm actually currently in Boston. Is there a robotics team at VCU? Not quite, but you can start one. It's super easy to start clubs. So I know there's a Hyperloop team, there's a Formula SAE team. I think electrical and computer engineering, every once in a while they have a robotics competition. And yes, Virgin Galactic is working on Hyperloop. Is me. At this
Somebody's asking if you are self-sufficient. I think Tammi has been self-sufficient for a long time.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy about where I am in my life and the job that I'm working at, because I find it very fulfilling to create something that can help a lot of people. I think not trying to down engineering jobs. There's just a lot of jobs in military that are related to military around Virginia that I'm like not quite comfy working on. So, this is like the perfect thing for me right now. I'd say, yeah, I mean, also moving during the pandemic is not easy. And also going to grad school during pandemic is not easy.
And by the way, don't think that Tammi didn't have fun. She traveled to, is it Greenland that you made that map?
Oh yeah, Iceland.
Iceland.
This is a picture of, I don't want to, I have this as a background.
I think you pay for all your expenses because she was working all the time.
Yeah. And then I made a map on polar steps. So I try to track my travels. So of course I actually went to Iceland with Arthur and a bunch of others. So we have Arthur, me, Stephen, who's also an alumni of VCU, and then Rose, who is in interior design. That is like almost the whole Liftoff Innovation Company, but basically I mapped out different places that we went to in Iceland. So during spring break, we rented a car and completed the ring road. We missed the Western Fjords, but we did this in a week and went to different places. But there's like some other trips.
So you can be an engineer and have some fun. She's been traveling all over the place with her own money.
I find that to be very important to take breaks. It's important to, think about your future, but it's also important to take breaks and, every once in a while step back and just reset. Iceland's beautiful, is damn expensive. I spent about $2,000 if I did my math right. Travel with a group. We ate pasta all the time, so that's how we made it in budget. Yeah, it's very.
Any
very-
questions for Tammi? This is your chance to ask questions. Right, if you don't have questions, please thank Tammi for her time and for coming
you,
here.
Tammi.
Thank you.
Appreciate the
Yeah.
time.
Learn from her. And you don't have to be necessarily the typical mechanical engineer that everybody thinks that you should be doing. You can do all kinds of different things. So thank you so much, Tammi, for taking time off your day. Appreciate talking to students as somebody who's very young and new, not your old teacher. So that should be more relatable. So thank you so much for everybody for coming. There's a quiz for you to finish. You have a week to finish. It has only 2 questions, so it should take you 2 minutes to do. It's about Tammi. That's pretty much it. All right. I will see everybody later and have a great day. Thank you, Tammi.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, you too.